Okay, this video is going to show you how to do a one-way analysis of variance in SPSS. So one way, one IV, more than two groups. Okay, so again, take a look at the SPSS guide for more detailed information, but this will quickly walk you through the steps. So we have our sub-ID variable. We have our group designation, much like the t-test. We're going to give a value of 1 to those members in the first group, 2 to those members in the second group, and so on. In this case, we have 3 groups, so we're going to have values 1 through 3. Here's our dependent variable, whatever that is, and that's entered there, and that's what we're going to analyze. So to do this, I'm going to introduce you to the syntax. You can do it through the menus, but I'm going to introduce you to the syntax because there's a number of advantages that you get in the syntax later on when we do more complex designs. So this file is called Oneway SPSS, and you can open it up, and it explains this in the guide what each of these commands do. But the Manova command, using the Manova command, you can get some additional information that you can't get if you use a plain old-fashioned ANOVA. So anyway, we're going to put Manova. Manova stands for multivariate analysis of variance. And we're going to analyze the dependent variable. So this is where it has to match up with whatever's in your editor. So let me move these side by side. Whatever's in your spreadsheet. So I called it DV, so it has to match DV there. If you call it recall, it would have to be recall here. And then we're going to use by, and the by indicates that it's a between subjects manipulation. And we have a grouping variable to indicate what our groups are, organize our data. And so you have group parentheses, and you're going to have 1, which is the lowest value, and 3, which is the highest value, right? So if you had 10 groups, it would be 1 space 10, for example. Now these other little bits of syntax give you important information. This line here gives you the group means for each of the groups means and standard deviations for each of our 3 groups. This will give you effect size, and this command will give you power, all of which are really important and all of which we'll discuss in class if we haven't already. So when you have your data entered in this way, if you want to now run the analysis, you can just highlight, or you can put your cursor right there. And then let me expand this a little bit. There's a little green arrow here which will allow you to run it. And when you run it, you're going to get your output. So let me walk you through the output here. So here's your group, and group 1, 2, and 3, that's the code. You could use a value labels command to put actual labels in there, means and standard deviations for each group, and check your ends to make sure that you've entered the data properly. Now you've got your source table, right? And so your sources of variance, and so here's your error variance, which is on top, your between subjects IV variance, and so here's your degrees of freedom. So in this F, the degrees of freedom are 2, which would be the numerator, 39, which is the denominator. The F value is 4.9, and the P value, significance of F is the P value, 0.013, so that's less than 0.05. So that means that there's a statistically significant difference. You'd have to do some post hoc tests to find out where the differences are. But right now we know there's a difference among these 3 group means. This stuff down here you can ignore, right? That's just other stuff. And then if you're interested in your effect size, the partial eta squared is 0.20. So that's about, we're talking about 20% of the variance, a very strong effect, right, in this particular example. And then the power, well, we rejected the null, so we don't have to worry about the power. But if you were concerned, if you were accepting the null hypothesis, you would see that we were a little bit underpowered here. But we detected an effect, so we're good. So that's how to do a one-way analysis of variance in SPSS.